Greetings, Craig DeRoche, President and CEO of Family Policy Alliance, and we are putting this together on short notice. Thank you for those in the audience that are joining us here today. I see there's many people. We're going to ask you to comment here, put in where you're from. Let's get started that way. We'll be asking questions. We'll be putting links in. But folks, this is a live presentation of video. I am joined, and I will introduce in a moment, Dr. Mahri Irvine with WoLF, and we're going to have her on here, and we're going to talk about really the President Biden's executive order on June 15th without any real public notice comes out, and well, I'll let you, Dr. Irvine, introduce yourself. Let everybody know what WoLF. We love working with WoLF, the Women's Liberation Front. You're the executive director, very experienced in advocacy for the rights of women, and that includes overlap in some of the portfolio of what a lot of family groups work on, which is the civil rights of our daughters, our wives, for those of us that are men, and the women in our society. It's great to have you with us, Mahri. Tell us a little bit about your organization.
Sure. Thank you so much, Craig. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Mahri Irvine. As Craig mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Women's Liberation Front, or WoLF for short. And WoLF is the nation's largest radical feminist, nonpartisan, nonprofit agency fighting to protect, restore, and advance the rights of women and girls. And as Craig mentioned, WoLF and FPA have a lot in common. We have many shared values, and one of our shared values is that we are fighting against very, very regressive and harmful gender ideology. And we really want to make sure that women and girls and children as well are not going to be harmed anymore from the gender ideology that we've been seeing just sweep across this country in the past decade.
And that's what we work together on. And here we have today an executive order. Why don't you walk both of our audiences through what President Biden did today?
Sure, absolutely. So I've got it pulled up here. There's a lot in here. And if we had to summarize it in just one sentence, I would say that, you know, we definitely saw this coming in the sense that the Biden administration has just been not just hinting, but outright talking about, you know, catering not to the lesbian, gay, and bisexual communities, but catering to the transgender community specifically. And that's essentially what this executive order is all about. He starts off talking about how the whole purpose of this executive order is to address discriminatory legislative attacks against what he calls LGBTQI plus children, youth, and their families. Very early on in the executive order, he refers to any agencies or individuals who have been advancing legislation like Save Women's Sports bills or keeping prisons single sex, those types of bills. He calls us bullies, essentially. And so I think that's a really interesting position for the President of the United States to take, is to refer to diverse agencies, you know, social service groups, advocacy groups all over our country as bullies, just because we're trying to protect women and children. So
it's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm with, you know, like I actually wrote down here because I knew we were going to be talking, and I wrote, President is Chief Executive Officer, Chief Administrative Officer, Commander-in-Chief. And with this executive order, he's essentially saying parent and mental health counselor supreme for that was the craziest thing I thought, Mahri, when I looked at this, is he's declaring a clinical diagnosis and treatment plan for people with mental health. You know, we're being told it takes a biologist to tell whether or not a woman is a woman or a man is a man. But at the same time, the president, a president has the power to diagnose and require with the stroke of his pen what your treatment plan is with a psychiatrist, a cognitive behavioral therapist, a peer-to-peer support group that you're going to. It's really, you know, I know everybody talks about democracy crumbling or being shaky these days, but you wonder who's around the president and says, that's not what presidents of the United States and the Constitution do. I mean, am I being extreme, or
No,
when you read through this,
it's
some of the things in here are actually stuff like that?
It's very worrisome for so many issues. So it starts off where he's basically describing us as being discriminatory, being bullies, just because we're encouraging people to critically think about these issues. And there's a really large focus in this executive order about conversion therapy. And I'm an anthropologist by training. I studied linguistics and the power of language and linguistic manipulation. And I thought it was really interesting because, they're referring to this. I saw earlier someone had put out like a fact sheet, right? Well, they are making these claims about conversion therapy in this executive order. They don't even provide us with a definition of what they mean by conversion therapy. And then later in the document, they trot out the standard cliched old claim that, transgender youth are all going to die by suicide if we don't support, their delusions that they're turning into the opposite sex. And yet they didn't provide any citations. So they didn't provide any academic references to research studies about how conversion therapy will contribute to the deaths of children. So there's a lot in here, but we're definitely very concerned that he seems to be, acting as though he's a counselor by training, right? Like as though he's a mental health professional, and he's actually directing mental health professionals about what they should be doing and how they should be working with their clients.
Yeah, and it's crazy and it's frustrating, folks. And you're going to hear more about this in the coming days. But we wanted to come on here and just speak and share across some of the areas that this touches on. It does talk about conversion therapy and what that means for those of you that are listening in the audience that don't know fully. That is just a made up thing, as Dr. Irvine is saying. It's made up to be a derogatory part of where a person who no longer wants to live a lifestyle under that umbrella of, and he added a couple of initials to it today, probably for the first time, LGBTQ, and it keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't fit into that, or if you fit into that and you want to leave that umbrella, that it is going to be basically against the law in the eyes of the president and the Justice Department in America. And that's what they're calling conversion therapy. We had on as a guest, Mahri, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of folks that actually there's an organic movement that has welled up in California where they were first trying to ban what they called conversion therapy. And there were, I think, 1,000 people organically showed up at the Capitol in a panic because they had left behind the transgender lifestyle and LGBTQ lifestyle and had, spouses of the opposite sex and were raising children. Some had come to faith, others had not. But they all said, how could this be possible that you're denying me the right to be fully human and pursue what I want to pursue and get help to do what I want to do? And they couldn't get it done in California. And it's just interesting to me that he's trying to do it out of Washington, D.C. now. I'm not sure that this is the end. It feels kind of like the beginning to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
what people at home watching this should be concerned about. This is just his memo saying what he's calling his shot right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this is big government macro level from the top down. And Craig, you mentioned how he's added on, there's a lot of letters in this acronym, LGBTQI plus. And I know we have all seen much longer acronyms with more letters. And one of the points, that Women's Liberation Front wants to make is that it's really problematic and harmful to conflate sexual orientation with so-called gender identity. So people who are lesbian, gay, or bisexual, if we're talking about those people, we're talking about people's sexuality and attraction and sexual orientation. That is something that is completely different and not the same thing at all as a so-called gender identity. And we are hearing increasing numbers of voices from lesbian, gay, and bisexual advocacy groups and individuals across the United States who are coming out and saying, stop conflating us with the transgender movement. These are not the same communities at all. And so what we see President Biden doing is he's actually doing the opposite of recognizing diversity, right? He's actually conflating completely different groups of people into one category and claiming that they all need the same thing. And that's absolutely not reality.
And that is so condescending too of the human condition that we all share. By him saying, you wonder, you have to pause and wonder where he's getting this information, because you're right. The largest organization in America that represents people born with both genitalia, in different proportions, usually not both functioning, but they have many thousands of members, and their goal is to live a normal life with a gender of their choice. And they've been completely washed out of this debate too, where they want to choose to be a boy or a girl. And they're the people that actually suffer from the biological chromosomal level separation between the genders. And here we have people that just want to live that behavior. And you're right, it's not, and it's throwing all these sparks everywhere. We have our friends in prison, the women that are being basically tortured by men that are gaming the system already. We see children using this as a tool. If my child's said they were going to run away, if I didn't, I don't know, buy them the smallest thing, pretty soon they'd be saying they were going to run away for everything. Actually, the founder of our organization, Dr. James Dobson, he had a lot of people that criticized him for a lot of things, but his first book, one of his first books, The Strong-Willed Child, really spoke to this. Like, what are you doing? If you're trying to help somebody, you're actually putting children. And the other part about this is not just he's the mental health counselor in chief, it's the contrast, it's the sports, but he wants to be the parent here too. There is a section in this, Mahri, as I read it, where he's talking about the policies in our school districts. He wants them to further interfere with the decisions and the rights of parents here, which is stunning to me in this political environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've seen a lot, this issue come up a lot in the past few years, with parents only recently finding out, that their kids are being indoctrinated by transgender ideology. And again, this goes back to school administrators and counselors being instructed with guidance from their authority figures, telling them that they're not supposed to share private information with the parents at home, right? So children are coming to school and they say they want to go by a different name, and they think they're actually, the girls say they're a boy. And then the parents aren't actually being educated about that and informed about that. So there's a lot of parental rights issues. And this whole executive order is very much promoting that kind of very troubling directives that we're seeing. I also wanted to mention, Craig, you and I had talked about this earlier, how concerning it is to see the President of the United States actually engaging in the sexualization of children. When we think about human beings as a species, right? When we are born, we're not sexual creatures, right? We don't have sexual interests until we hit puberty. And then that's the way we were designed, right? Biologically, to then start to engage in sexual activities. And so when a phrase like LGBTQ children is used, what that implies is that children have a sexual orientation. But when kids are little, 5 years old, 10 years old, they're not experiencing any kind of sexual attraction at that point. And so I found that just really creepy in here, where he's talking about LGBT children.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Creepy is the right word, because it's what are you trying to do if you're not letting somebody hear the other side of this stuff? You're literally trying to trap people. You're trying to corner them, and you're trying to use perverse incentives and pressure tactics to get people to behave or live a certain way. It's the opposite of what he's saying. He wants to end discrimination. That is discrimination. That is unequal treatment. That is targeting of our most vulnerable. And really screwing up their lives. I can't speak for the president and what he's experienced in his life, but in recovery from addiction now for 12 years of my own life, I can tell you, that people will solve their problems in a whole bunch of unhealthy ways, for parents that have children, that have gone through addiction, that have gone through these other maladies want them to be able to work it out. And it's stunning to me that the president would believe that the federal government is a better parent than a parent when it comes to mental health issues, that the president of the United States is a better parent when it comes to what is being taught in the curriculum. And the first thing out of the gate, exactly as you say, the first thing out of the gate is not only do I think that you can't teach your kids about sex, I think your kids need to have sex. We talk about desensitizing kids. I mean, it would be like telling a kindergartner or a third grader, we want you to watch somebody get shot, to educate you on guns. We want to talk to you about sex. That is a very shocking first encounter when kids become aware of that. And you're right. They're trying to normalize this. It's disgusting. It's horrifying, and it's only the beginning. So, Craig DeRoche here with you, Dr. Levine with the. Am I pronouncing that right? I feel like
Irvine.
I'm sorry. And I apologize for that. My hearing aid battery is out, and I'm doing everything wrong today. But we're here together, the Women's Liberation Front, where she serves as the executive director, where I lead at Family Policy Alliance. We're working across the aisle. And so I think a lot of people listening right now, and we've got dozens and dozens of folks. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your comments. Keep them coming in. Please share this with other people. Coming out of this, what would you say are the next steps? Because it really begins, crack of dawn tomorrow. What are our organizations doing? What should our audiences know we're up to?
Yeah, I think it's really important for, both of our groups of supporters to know that we're really committed. Both of our agencies are so committed to nonpartisan work, right? We are willing to reach across the aisle, reach out to anybody who is concerned about these issues. So it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, political independent. These are issues that are nonpartisan. They affect all children, all parents, all communities, no matter how big or how small, no matter how rural or how suburban or urban. And so I think, educating one another through grassroots efforts is always really great, because I think still many people who have been indoctrinated so far, they're just going to hear that there was an executive order for gay rights, right? That's all they're going to hear. They're going to be like, oh, that's great. And they're not going to understand all the nuanced problems and all of the harm that's going to come from this. So I think really educating your neighbors and your community members is a really great way to go, to kind of walk them through this and talk to them about, this is what it means when Biden says healthcare, he's talking about double mastectomies for 14-year-old girls. He's talking about encouraging boys and girls that they should be physically modifying their bodies. And I think a lot of even parents don't understand that at this point. So just that basic education of community members is really, really important.
Well, that's where the work begins tomorrow. It's a privilege for the Family Policy Alliance. I know you work with some of the great family policy councils. Thank you to the FPC leaders in the 40 states that are on this call that work on these issues together. As Mahri pointed out, this is a bipartisan issue. This is about our shared values, the dignity and worth and value of each human life. And we're going to push back, and that work begins now. Thank you so much. We encourage you all to share this. Please share it. This is an important video. This is an important executive order. It's about a lot more than even the issues that the president talks about here. It's about the role of the federal government in your life. And it's going to take the left and the right, as we're doing on this call, to join forces, unite, and push back. And we're going to be doing that with your support. Thank you. And we'll end it there, and we'll wish everybody well. And you and I will get to work on it tomorrow.
Yes, we will. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.